Everybody, Mike McConville here one more time for String Tech Workstation, Stratford, Ontario, Canada. We've got a couple of SGs in the shop today. This is something that I'm sure a lot of you have done yourselves, but I thought I would go over this. We've got this black SG that has a few battle wounds and chips in various places, and we're going to do a very quick, simple, easily available touch-up on this black SG. You can see there's little chunks missing all over the place. There's a little sort of wear marks along here, a couple of chips on the horn. We're going to touch that all up with some black nail polish. A lot of people don't realize this, but this is actually lacquer, nitrocellulose lacquer. It's a quick, easy fix. We're not talking about a refinish here, but just a little touch up, sort of like stone chips on the hood of your new car. Same idea. So that's done. We'll let that black lacquer set on Derek's Gibson SG, and we will now get back to this SG that was shipped from Pennsylvania. Now this is actually a Japanese copy. Derek is a customer from Toronto. Now both of these guitars will be set up for E-flat tuning, 10 to 46. Those SG frets have been buffed to a mirror shine. So the fact that there is no router to pick up cavity here makes this whole tenon and mortise joint a much stronger joint. We all know what a truss rod is supposed to do and how the neck is supposed to react, but sometimes it just doesn't quite work out that way. So what we have here is I've adjusted the truss rod. Lay of the neck is really good. We got one high spot right here. Not very much, but enough to disrupt the lay of the necks. So now that we've sort of discovered that one high spot, and this is not a loose fret, that is actually a little bit proud, just enough to kind of be a fly in the ointment. So when you go to dress full length, you can see that there is fret wear in those frets. We're going to get rid of that too, but there's plenty of real estate in those crowns. This is a very high fret. We got lots to work with here. I know that most people don't want to be inconvenienced by this, especially a Les Paul, because as you know, you've seen in a dozen videos I've already posted that getting the nut out of a Les Paul, I'm not talking Epiphone, I'm talking Gibson here, is a very exacting task and comes with a lot of risk. If you don't know what you're doing, don't experiment. Find someone that can do it for you. If you want to true the fingerboard full length, you can have the nut in there obstructing the path of your mill file. We're set up now to do this fret dress. We are going to hit that one high spot, and then we'll take out all of those wear marks, and when we're done, these frets will be like brand new. They'll be better than new. They'll be buffed to a 1 micron finish. These frets are now buffed out, and we're ready to put that new nut in. The original nut was cut so low that the nut needed to be replaced anyway, so we're going to put a compensated nut on this one as well. Before these guitars go back to Derek in Toronto, I'm going to plug them in and kind of let you hear for yourself. So Derek's SG is also completed. Frets, dress, compensated nut, and intonated for E-flat tuning, 10 to 46 strings. We have an extra challenge here. As I got into this job, I started to get a little bit suspicious. Okay, first thing that made me a little bit suspicious is this sort of pink kind of undercoat here. Just the way that truss rod cavity is cut, like there's a bit of overlap here, none on the other side. So my initial suspicion was that, this headstock may have been broken. We all know how common that is. That was the very first red flag. But there's more. Okay, here's the next red flag. The number 1 on this ruler is lined up dead center on the 12th fret. Now when we come up to here and we look closely, the Les Paul scale is 24 5/8. So the center of the 12th fret to the edge of this fingerboard should be 12 and 5/16. Well, there's our 5/16 right there. There's something off in the relationship of the fingerboard to the headstock to the body. So what that means, it means that the nut has been pushed forward. The previous video I did on that 335 where the guy lopped off a big hunk of the fingerboard, this is a similar situation. This distance is too short, so the end of the fingerboard should be here. Okay, here's our third red flag. As you can see, I've had to cut back the focal point into the body of the nut in order to get the open string and the 12th fret to be in tune. We're getting closer, still not quite there yet. I'll definitely give you a demo when it's all done. Well, I'm not ashamed to say that this one threw a major curveball at me. This neck has been repaired, like I mentioned, all those other points. This is actually the 4th attempt at making a compensated nut. This was the first nut I made. This was the second nut I made. You can see I kept cutting back that nut shelf thinking, well, you know, something's weird here. This is the last one that you saw. So what I ended up doing on this third nut was I cut into the body of the nut to bring the strings in deeper. You should never have to do that. And another thing that made me a little suspicious is this nut is just slightly smaller than it should be for a typical Gibson guitar. My third attempt yielded almost perfect intonation. So when I cut this nut, I did not slant back the crown of the nut because I need to cut these values into this nut before I do all my final filing. And this is what we ended up with. Open string and 12th fret are perfectly in tune. So the 7th fret notes and the corresponding 19th fret notes, they're all in tune. So the last thing we have to deal with now is the open string and the fretted first note. So I need to take down the height of those strings all the way across that nut until the open string and the 1st fret note are in tune, all 6 strings. Okay, I have to give you guys the rundown on this. This saddle was flipped 180. Rest of them we were okay. We kind of squeaked out the intonation. When I got the guitar, the strings went through this way and then wrapped around. Now, sometimes you get away with that, but the problem is that when the strings came off the top of the tailpiece, this is the wraparound tailpiece. Lots of people do it, but in this case, what happens is with that wraparound, as you know, the string comes off the top of the tailpiece. So that makes for a very shallow pitch from the focal point on the saddle to the tailpiece. Because the strings were kind of slopping around, and even when you tuned them, there was always sort of subtle movement on the back half of the saddle going to that wraparound tailpiece. So I reconfigured it, did the tailpiece the way it was designed by Gibson. My mission was to make sure this guitar played perfect and played perfectly in tune. And that wraps up all the bridge tailpiece issues. I did drop the pickups down, but they were also disrupting the intonation and the tuning of the guitar. You definitely get a crashier sound with the pickups ultra close. Whether that's a good thing or not is debatable. That's, again, kind of personal choice. So that kind of takes care of this end of the guitar. It did need a fret dress, as you saw earlier in the video, but the real culprit was this nut. There isn't much I haven't seen, but this was a real challenge to get this perfectly intonated. And it is perfectly intonated. I put money on it that this neck was broken and then re-glued. There was definitely something weird about the geometry of the nut and the fact that the fingerboard was cut a little short. None of that matters now because this guitar plays absolutely 100% perfectly in tune and smooth as silk. So last step is to put a brand new, fresh set of strings on, and you can hear and see for yourself. So let's start with the most common thing that people do. So we'll go open string 12th fret all the way across. So start with the 6th string. then we'll play the open string in 1st fret. And lastly, we'll just go through all those garden variety chords. G, D, C, and then E major. Now I'll go through that sequence of root 6th and 10th. Here's a quick rundown on Derek's SG. So